Hello, and thank you so much for joining me today for Kineo Totara Office Hours. Today what we're going to be talking about is all of the different ways that you can add SCORM to your courses. It's a part of the system that's been there for a very long time, but I don't think a lot of people are aware of the different ways that they can go about adding SCORM. So we're going to talk about all those different ways today. A little bit about myself very quickly. My name is Taylor Craig, and I am a platforms consultant here for Kineo. What I get to do is I get to train you guys. I get to work with our office hours groups. I work with our existing clients, potential clients. I get the opportunity to work with just about everybody. I get to work with just about all the different areas of our company as well, which is pretty fun for me. Work very closely as a part of our implementation team to make sure that your solution is implemented and that you are trained on that solution effectively. I get to work really closely with our amazing solution architects, Susan and Justin here, and make sure that the solution that they are providing to you, make sure you're comfortable and trained on that. So that's really kind of my primary role. A little bit about office hours. What we do here is I have about a 15-minute feature presentation. I do post that part of the discussion to YouTube for anybody's access. In those weekly emails that you receive, there is a button inside of there allowing you to go and watch any of those different recordings. We also have a new button inside of that email that allows you to send it to your colleagues. So if you have a colleague that's also working in your LMS and maybe needs to come and ask some questions or whatever they need to do, come to this free training basically, you can send them that link and then they can sign up to be part of that mailing list. So that's going to allow them to receive the same email that you maybe receive, and then they will be able to register, sign up, and come of their own free will. You won't have to forward it to them anymore. So that's something that you do have available. Now, the last part of the session is about a 45-minute part of the session typically, and that's client-only time. We allow you to come in, ask any questions that you have. Seriously, it's basically free training. With your permission, I'll even pull up your site and we'll take a look at stuff. So just to kind of keep that in mind, and that is what our office hours are. So today what we're talking about, like I said, we're talking about adding SCORM. So there are 3 different ways that you would typically add a SCORM file to one of your Totara courses. One of those is just the good old-fashioned way, uploading that SCORM file, getting it in there, and loading it that way. The second one is by dragging and dropping the file directly from your computer directly into the course. That feature has been around since about 2.7. You can actually do that with all different kinds of stuff. You don't just have to do that with SCORM. But a lot of people just don't realize that feature's there. So I like to make sure to show that particular option as well. And then finally, another option that you have available to you is adding SCORM from the server directly. We do run into situations where clients either have really large SCORM files that they can't get to load in. Maybe it's past the limit as far as what they can do within the interface. And they maybe need to be able to load those in a different way. So by doing this, and it's not something we do for everybody, so if you have a situation where you maybe need to do that, you can always submit a support case, and then our support team would evaluate if this is a great solution for you. If it is a good solution for you, fantastic. We can throw those SCORM files up there on the server, and then you can pull them directly down just straight into those SCORM files. Makes it a little bit easier on you. So let's take a look here. Let's go ahead and jump into my system. So let's look at the good old-fashioned way. Let me get pulled up some SCORM files here. I have a few on my computer. I just have to find them. There they are. Okay. So here's my files. They're on our virtual network. So that's where we kind of keep some stuff out there. You, I would imagine, have something very similar. So I'm going to just pop that up there for right now. What we're going to do is we're going to do the old-fashioned way. We're going to say add an activity or resource. Scroll in, select SCORM, say add. Here we're going to name this. I'm going to call this old-fashioned. Okay. Now you can drag and drop it directly into here, so you do have the option to just boom, drop it in here. That's not the drag and drop I'm talking about. And then you also have the ability to click on Add, and you would go to Upload a File, choose the file, locate the file on your computer, and then load it in that way. So that's going to be your really, really old-fashioned way. I personally really like that whole drag and drop thing because it's just way easier. So I'm going to come here. I've got one that I know is the smallest, this time management. I'm just going to drag and drop it. We're going to drop the whole thing. It's a zip file. We're going to drop the whole thing in there. Also, that's something to keep in mind when you're doing SCORM. A lot of times people will try and unzip those folders and then load them, or they'll try to load the files one at a time, or they'll load them and then unzip it. You don't have to do that. That's kind of the beauty of this particular module, is it will play them as a zip file. So you just drop in your zip file and you're good to go. Okay, so once it's loaded, you will see the kind of looks like a stack of books icon there. You'll see that in there. And this auto update frequency, that's not going to do anything for me at this point in time because I'm not pulling it from somewhere external. So I'm not pulling from the server, basically, is what's happening there. But what I am doing is I'm just loading it directly because I'm going to use this same file from now until forever, okay, until I decide to update it manually. Okay, so keep that in mind. All of your other settings, those are going to be just exactly how you might have used those in the past. It's totally up to you. A lot of these particular settings, they're going to be kind of a personal preference type of thing. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save and return to the course. Okay, so there's our old-fashioned option. And now let's go ahead and let's add kind of the 2.7 way, is what I like to call it. I'm just going to make sure my editing's turned on. Editing is turned on. I've got all my nifty little icons here, so I'm able to see that. I'm going to grab the same SCORM file because for me it's the smallest and you don't have to sit here and watch it load for a really long time. So I'm going to grab that and just drag and drop it straight into the course. Now earlier I mentioned that you can do this with all different types of files. So any type of file that Totara takes, so PDF, PowerPoint, Word document, any of that good stuff, you can drag and drop it in here. So you have some options. So what it's going to tell you is, do you want me to unzip these files and create a folder resource? There's a resource inside of Totara called folder. Basically, it will drag and drop, and then learners will have access to the files within it. And then they can download those particular files. That's not what I want to do. I don't want to give them the ability to download the files. I want them to play as a package. I can create a file resource, which is going to just put in it'll put all of them in, but it'll pick one of them as the main file. It'll give you the option to do that. Or I can say, add a SCORM package, because that's what we want to do. So we're going to make that selection. We're going to say upload. Again, it's going to sit here and it's going to load, and I'm going to see it load across the screen. You can select from your file picker. You can go in there and you can pick 3 or 4 different files. They don't have to be in a folder or in a zip file. You can grab several of them, drag and drop all of them, and dump them in at once, which is pretty nice. I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing that with enormous files, but definitely not something bad to do with smaller ones. Okay, so this one, it comes across named as it was named in the system, so, or in your file name. So my file name was time management, and so it came across that way. I may want to change some things. I may want to come in here and say edit and then change the name of it. I'm going to call this the 2.7 way because that's kind of what I've been referring it to as. I'm going to hit enter, and then that's going to just change the name. Now, typically when you're doing this drag and drop and putting it in here, you know, what you've probably done is you've sat down with your group that works on the LMS, or at least this is what I hope you've done, and you guys have decided, you know what, this is going to be the default settings that we use for our SCORM files. We use these same ones every single time just about, and we'll change it on a one-off basis. If you've made that decision, then you guys have gone to Site Administration, and you've gone to Plugins, Activity Modules, and SCORM Package. You've gone in there and you've set your defaults. If you've set those defaults, dragging and dropping is all you should have to do. Drag and drop that file in, maybe rename it, but you shouldn't really actually have to go into those settings unless you know it's one of those one-offs, right? And so you need to change it. So just keep that in mind. And finally, the final one that we want to take a look at is pulling this down from the server. So I had our support team go in and load me in some files, some SCORM files. So I'm going to come in, add an activity or resource. I'm going to select SCORM. And what the support guys did is they went in and they set me up a repository. So basically an area or a bucket for these files to live in and for me to be able to see them. And they loaded them on the back side, on the server side. And so now I have the option to grab them. Okay. And you'll notice I do need to put in my description and all that good jazz because now I'm working in this section. So in this particular area, I am going to need to click on the plus sign and then click on SCORM. In this ability, that's what they named my repository. They may name yours something else. And I have all of the different SCORM files that I have on my computer, but they're already in the system, basically. So all I have to do is come in here, and I can actually grab one of the larger ones, even. And I'm going to choose to save it as that file. I don't necessarily want an alias or a shortcut to that file, but you can do that if you want to. And I'm going to select, and bam, that made that a lot faster because it was already on the server. I didn't have to load it to the server. And that's a pretty large SCORM file. So it allowed me to just pop that in directly into the system. Again, not something that we typically do. We don't do it a whole lot, but it is something that we can do if you have a situation that is logical and you need to do this, if it makes that a little bit easier. Now, you do have the ability to do some auto update frequency here. If you are doing this and you maybe are uploading something, changing your SCORM files really regularly, now that might be something that we would talk out and figure out the best solution for you and how that would work. But if you need to, you can update these every day or every time it's used. It's going to depend on your particular files. Now, kind of disclaimer there, it does need to be the same name. So it does need to be the same name, even if it's coming from the server and you're just updating. That way it'll come in here and it'll keep the old people's records and then the new people still have to complete it. So that's kind of how that's going to function for you there. So that's going to be one of our options. So I'm going to just save and return to the course. And like I said, if you've got your default settings set, then you already know what these settings are and you've already got it set. And you should be able to go down there and just scroll to the bottom and save. So I'm just going to launch this one so you can see it. And there we go. So it's going ahead and loading. Okay. So really kind of a nice feature there. Wanted to make you aware of the different options that you have as far as loading SCORM into your courses. I don't think a lot of people are aware of those, so we want to make sure that you are. All right, guys. I'm going to go ahead and turn the floor over to you. If you have any questions, fantastic. You can type those down into the little questions box. If you don't, thank you again so much for joining us, and we hope to see you next week.